China's political system is decentralized, and because of the need to win votes, it goes through emotional phases, and it's entering such a phase now where China is demonized out of mass emotion. There's some manipulation behind the scenes, but it's not based on knowledge. You ask those who are anti-China, who is Luoyang, who is Singapore, they won't be able to tell you, but they have strong emotions. They know everything about Tibet.
Imagine this, flying from Tampa to China, Australia, or anywhere else in less than an hour. Flight engineers at the University of Central Florida are figuring out the secret to safe hypersonic travel. And Fox 13's Craig Patrick explains their discovery in tonight's edition of Breakthroughs in Science.
NASA developed the X-59 to break the speed barrier without emitting the deafening supersonic boom on people below. And right now, commercial airlines are producing a new generation of supersonic jets to cut passenger flight times in half. But while that's all drawing a great deal of excitement, as it should, these students at the University of Central Florida have already taken a much greater leap. 10 minutes by air from Tampa to California. Yes. Now, they've not yet built such a jet, but they did figure out how to stabilize a hypersonic engine in this lab. That's hypersonic as opposed to supersonic. NASA's X-59 supersonic aircraft is designed to fly 925 miles per hour. UCF's hypersonic design could lead up to air travel 14 times faster, up to 13,000 miles per hour.
The first reaction was actually denial. So from not believing it's actually real.
Now, for context, we've powered engines through internal combustion for more than 200 years.
When you have like a fuel injector on a car, it sprays mist into your combustor.
The fuel mist burns, which releases energy, which drives motion. And so we currently ride or fly on comparatively slow, controlled reactions like a burning candle flame. But with hypersonic engines, instead of a slow burn, they set off a chain of powerful explosions, which drives much more motion with much less fuel.
That controlled explosion is highly efficient in releasing that energy compared to your typical candle flame, which you fly on today. That is not an efficient process.
But while hypersonic engines are far more powerful and efficient, they can also be unstable.
The problem with the detonation process is that it's unsteady and very hard to control.
And that's where Dr. Karim Ahmed and his students broke new ground. They developed and tested the world's first hypersonic engine that can stabilize the detonation. So what were you thinking? Holy smoke, we did it!
Yes, we were able to stabilize it repeatedly. It was exciting that now we've got the world's first stabilized oblique detonation wave.
Here's their first experiment that drew attention around the world. It's basically a tube split into 3 parts. The first part ignites an injection of hydrogen and oxygen, and the second part injects more hydrogen, and as the burst shoots into the third section, it hits this 30-degree ramp. And that ramp holds and stabilizes the shockwave reaction. So you get thrust from the explosion and a shockwave to keep the explosion going until they cut off the fuel. And this is how that burst of thrust looks in the lab. Rachel Heidevick is a doctoral student from Tampa. Here's how she explains what we just witnessed to her family and friends.
Most of the time I just say I study fire and how to make fire happen faster. And then if fire can happen faster, then we can get places faster.
This chart shows how they sustain the detonation wave for 3 seconds before they cut off the fuel. The next steps are to keep repeating the experiment and to keep expanding it.
Can we predict its behavior and achieve it every time reliably? Once you're at that phase, you're ready for that technology transition.
They've already built a second, much longer tube.
I've been spending every single day here at the lab since I started my PhD, designing this from the ground up.
They are not setting off any sonic booms and don't plan to, but it's still very loud and jars people who aren't used to it. 3, 2, 1. sound you hear on television does not reflect how it sounds in person.
I am very used to it. We still regularly shock passersby.
With that kind of a shot, how does this whole tube not shoot back?
Lots of cinder blocks and a giant metal claw that holds it to the foundation.
While they're still testing the detonation wave engine, they've already conceived how it will look and work in flight. In concept, a more traditional aircraft will take off and carry the hypersonic craft into the air and then let it go. Then a rocket booster will accelerate it to supersonic speed, and then they'll fire up the hypersonic chamber. Shock waves will ignite the fuel, and that slope design, that 30-degree ramp built into the chamber, will stabilize the detonation wave, maintaining hypersonic speed until it's time to land from one continent to another in a matter of minutes.
From one continent to another in a matter of minutes.
Another UFO has been spotted, this time in New York. You blink and you miss this one. TMZ captured the video. It lasts a nanosecond. An unidentified object whizzing across a clear blue sky. You slow this thing down, looks pretty legit. A Blue Angels demonstration was going on in Long Island. The object in question moves so fast, a lot faster than the plane, by the way. This is the second alleged UFO sighting in New York in recent months.
What did you do with the video, and did you reach out to authorities to share it with them?
Thank you for having me. And when I realized that I had something like this on the video, the first thing I did was I emailed the FAA to let them know what I saw, and maybe it was a safety hazard. I reached out to them. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back from them. They didn't acknowledge my email.
Do they look like they're under intelligent control?
Absolutely, they are. And we know now from the amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act last year that Senate Majority Leader Schumer introduced, called the Schumer Amendment, about disclosing UAP information. We know now from that draft legislation that there are non-human intelligences visiting us in all domains, the sea, the sky, and we see reports over land. And they're using what they call in this amendment technology of unknown origin. So this is a national or global security concern. And the reason I wrote about the aspect in the oceans is that's my background. I'm an expert in it. And we'll never have a complete understanding of these phenomena unless we look at the ocean too.
You also wrote that we know more about Mars, the surface of the moon, than we do about our own ocean. You have a science background. I gotta ask, what do you think it is?
Well, there's a number of possibilities. I don't know, and most of the intelligence community does not know. But it could either be from elsewhere in the universe. Some people speculate it could be from another dimension, but I don't think we have the mathematics to explain that, or the physics just yet. Or even possibly within the planet somewhere. None of this is known.
I've been under attack. I've been gaslit. I've had secret federal filings follow me that I'm committing crimes referred to the Justice Department, which of course wasn't true. We'd already filed it in federal court months before. They didn't even check this shit. If you're gonna fucking frame somebody and fucking lie on the goddamn federal court with the fucking notes already filed in goddamn court, you bastard. So fuck you. And fuck anybody else that tries to go on with your shit. You want fucking war, you fucking got it. I told you one more fucking lie and I was gonna do this, all right? I tried to sustain this place. I didn't believe America was as corrupt as this. I didn't believe we were this fucked, and we are this fucked. This country is administratively got a bunch of scum in charge of it. And that's why it's going down the tubes in America, and the whole world sees it. So you misjudged who I am, and any of your minions misjudged who I am, and you have no idea. No idea. So go ahead, try to jerk off some operation to shut the doors here and do that and prove everything I said. It doesn't matter. And I don't sit there and make threats. I make promises. I haven't had time to dig it out of my phone. But I will. And you will, at the end of the day, know that Alex Jones, the American patriot, defeated your evil ass. Try to be dramatic here, but it's been a hard fight. These people
says her husband jumped onto the windshield of her car and was thrown off while she was driving. This happened last Monday in a Wendy's parking lot in Holland. Today I spoke with that woman who says she wants to share her side of things.
I'm still in disbelief. The whole thing, it just blows my mind. I don't know.
Distraught, heartbroken, Venice Leone says she never meant to hurt her husband, Robert Leone.
Oh, yeah. And it all happened so fast, and I would have never, ever hurt him in a million years. He was my best friend.
He died with her behind the wheel. It happened at this Wendy's in Holland. The two began fighting, Venice says, because she ordered a Nintendo Switch and not a PS5.
He got really upset. Like, I've never seen him like that. I've never seen him fly up the handle like that. I've never seen him. I don't know why he got so angry, but then he started, like, telling me I'm, calling me names and being very aggressive, and he scared my daughter. She, like, screamed at the top of her lungs, like, scared because he was yelling at me. He slapped me, and then he punched my arm. And I was trying to keep my cool. And I told him, I can cancel the order. I can order the PS5, and
things escalated from there. At one point, Robert gets out of the car.
My daughter's screaming. She's going, Mom, help me. Get me away from him. Mom, save me. So I pulled out of the parking lot. The parking spot. And I backed out and I went to go forward.
Venice says she was trying to drive from the Wendy's parking lot to the Meijer parking lot, just until Robert cooled off. She describes what happens next.
I was pulling out, he jumped on the hood and he was holding on like where the windshield wipers are. And I had proceeded to turn, and as I turned, he slipped off and he fell and hit his head, and that's what caused him to pass away. Is he got a brain bleed that was inoperable and they couldn't fix it.
I asked Venice why she didn't just stop driving.
I thought about that later, but it happened so quickly, and my daughter was freaking out, and he was trying to break the window on the driver's side door. He was kicking the car. I was scared. Like, honestly, I was scared.
I reached out to Holland Public Safety today, and they tell me that the incident is still under investigation.
So, what does the U.S. get wrong about China, and how would you advise them to think about China?
The U.S. political system is decentralized, and because of the need to win votes, it goes through emotional phases, and it's entering such a phase now where China is demonized out of mass emotion. There's some manipulation behind the scenes, but it's not based on knowledge. You ask those who are anti-China, where's Luoyang? Where's Singapore? They won't be able to tell you, but they have strong emotions. They know everything about Tibet, they know everything about Xinjiang. But really? So, it's not sustainable, and they don't understand the nature of China. Why is China always building walls around itself? Every dynasty rebuilds the Great Wall. And even today, capital markets, Hollywood movies, COVID, China is constantly building walls around itself. Because it is happy in its own homogeneity. It has a very different nature from America. But the Americans think that China wants to displace them as top dog in the world. And because of that, it's trying to contain China, even pull it down, if possible. And my fear is it may exhaust itself in the process, and I don't think it will succeed. You take this latest move to impose 100% tax on EVs. The Qing dynasty did that right in the 19th century. And the result was the world passed it by. And within a few decades, its position plummeted in the world. There's the danger of shutting out the world. The Europeans can't do it, not the Germans, so they said, no, we will rise to the challenge of China. And whether it's Mercedes-Benz or BMW, these are very solid organizations, and I think they will put up a stiff resistance, and in some ways will remain better than the Chinese. But if you say, no, hide behind the walls, 100% tariff, you become very weak. But this is the phase Americans are going through. But I fear that on multiple fronts now, they are facing very difficult challenges. You look at, the Democrats are more globalists. They express American exceptionalism. They feel that America should be dominant everywhere and its values should prevail everywhere. I don't think they can succeed. Trump is more isolationist. He tells NATO partners, if you don't cough up, it's like your insurance. If you don't pay your premium, the policy is cancelled. NATO won't defend you. People are in shock when he talks like that. But does it make sense? In a way, he does. Because if I am an ordinary American, who's paying for all this? Well, you can print the US dollar, that's okay. But one day, you cannot just print dollar like that. And it'll be a choice between guns and butter. So, my money goes to guns or for my butter? There's no question how they will vote.
And it'd be a choice between guns and butter. So, my money goes to guns or for my butter?
So over the past, say, 10 years, our leaders, that would be the Democratic Party, the so-called business community, and in fact, a lot of Republican leaders, have allowed into our country, against federal law and against our will, tens of millions of foreigners. Now, the question is, why have they done this? And by the way, we should say not just let them in, but paid for them to come, either overland through Latin America, through Mexico and our southern border, or by plane from the rest of the world. American citizens paid for that. And of course, when they arrive, they receive the entire suite of federal benefits, also at the expense of taxpayers. But the question remains, why? Why would you bring in this many people in such a short period against the law? Now, previous generations, the motive was really obvious. Farmers, for example, wanted cheap labor. We needed the help, or that was the argument anyway. But no one is making that argument now because you can't make it. There is no economic justification for bringing in tens of millions of people with lower than average educational attainment and no modern skills. And that's exactly what we've done. Because, of course, we don't need the help at all. We don't have a manufacturing sector. Agriculture is largely automated. And of course, AI is about to render a lot of American workers obsolete, as jobs that people do will now be done by machines. So there is no way to justify on economic grounds mass immigration in 2024. So once again, why is it happening? And it's happening for political reasons. It's happening because the Democratic Party has ceased making the case for itself to Americans. And so in order to keep power, in fact, to expand their power and to preside over the one-party state that they desire, they're going to need a brand new electorate. And this is their electorate. Foreigners will choose your leaders. You're not allowed to choose the leaders of foreign countries, but foreigners will choose your leaders, including in this election, this 2024 presidential election. Well, how would that work? It's illegal, you say, for illegal aliens to vote in a federal election. Well, actually, it's not illegal, it turns out. Congress passed something in the U.S. code, the federal code, a line that, unbeknownst to the rest of us, makes it legal for illegal aliens to vote in federal elections if they believe they are citizens. It's a state of mind. Did you know that? We didn't know that. Most people didn't know that. Things are changing fast, as you know, and you can tell how fast they're changing by the way that people talk about politics. Language reflects feelings and thoughts. When your views change, so does the way you talk about them. And that's especially true of liberals who have very deep feelings. And their main feeling, this has always been true, is contempt for you. If you ever listen to NPR, you know exactly how much contempt liberals have for you, and you get to pay for it. NPR takes your tax dollars and then lectures you about how immoral you are. That is liberalism distilled. It's been going on a long time. NPR has been running its particular scam since 1971, but the sneering tone you hear on NPR has been the hallmark of liberals for nearly a century. Liberals have contempt for Dwight Eisenhower and for Barry Goldwater and for Richard Nixon. Boy, did they, and for Gerald Ford even. If you're old enough to remember Ronald Reagan, you will recall vividly how liberals felt about him. Reagan was an idiot, they told you, a mouth breather, and so was anybody who would vote for him, very much including you. In the words of Al Gore, Republicans were the, quote, extra chromosome right wing. So they were literally genetically defective. That's how liberals actually talk. Wherever two or more liberals are gathered, you will find sanctimony. Liberals seem to lose any remaining sense of humor the moment Donald Trump arrived. Why? Well, because he called their bluff. Looking back, it's obvious what happened. By 2016, no one could argue that liberal programs, or many programs, the various fads and metaphorical wars we were waging on this or that bad thing, there was no evidence that any of it had done anything to improve American life. Liberals promised you they would make everything great, but they didn't. In fact, every single liberal enthusiasm failed. From radical feminism to urban renewal, from outsourcing to the so-called sharing economy. All of them, each and every one, turned out to be a complete disaster. The reason 2016 was significant is that's the year liberals could no longer deny this. They couldn't say, give us another 50 years and we'll turn Baltimore into Geneva.
With AI, is that what's going to happen to civilization? Are we giving birth to this thing? Like, when you hear this phrase, this is the way they phrase it, has begun training its next frontier model.
Yeah. Oh. Do you remember that last scene in Rosemary's Baby?
I don't.
Dude, it's so f***ed up. Spoiler, if you haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, just jump ahead a second. But, like, the end of it, they finally let her into the room where the Antichrist is, the demon baby, right?
Yeah.
And, like, she's been resisting. But then she hears the cry of the baby. And she goes, it's hungry. And then she goes to breastfeed it.
Oh, man.
Dude, yeah, like, so, like, right.
Do you know that the guy who ran the cult, that the building that I was under contract for, that I almost bought and turned into the mothership, the guy who ran that cult was in Rosemary's Baby?
A lot of people like that were.
He was in the background. But you know why? Because a lot of actors are crazy, and a lot of background actors are really crazy.
Pretty sure Anton LaVey was in it, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, because it was a Satan movie.
I could be wrong. Will you look that up, Jamie, so I don't seem like a dick? But
that makes sense. Back then, like, being a Satanist was, like, way more, like, talked about. You know about that guy in Florida that was, like, an open Satanist that worked for NASA?
Oh, yeah, that guy. Yeah, dude, holy shit. That guy's scary as f***.
Scary as f***.
Yeah, that guy's scary.
Yeah, and one of the guys that we had on our show, who was it that went down there? That went to the old, where the rocket factory used to be now, and then there's like bloods, scenes.
One of the hunters.
Rumors appear that the founder of Satan's Church, Anton LaVey, was a consultant on the set and played the Antichrist. Whoa.
Yeah.
But that dude, the NASA dude, so who was the guest, man, that came on that was telling us that they went down to that area?
What?
They went down to where the rocket factory used to be, and it's like a satanic ritual place now where freaks go. And they have like blood splattered all over, or it looks like red paint or something splattered all over the walls, and weird writing and and it's like he's super creeped out. But we're getting cooked, buddy. We're getting microwaved. We're gonna get AI microwaved in about 3 years.
That's right, baby. The AI Messiah is coming, baby.
Right, baby. The AI Messiah is coming, baby.
So the key event will be when the primacy of the US dollar breaks. We all know you have to break sometime or other because it's abnormal. If it's 30 years from now, well, let's drink and be merry. But if it's 5 years, well, we've got to calculate, right? Do we know when the cookie will crumble? We don't know. But the way the US is moving is bringing forward that day. I mean, they try to control countries by sanctions. And if you are subject to sanctions, it's no joke. I mean, I have Hong Kong friends. One of them is quite senior in administration. They say, now I'm completely beholden to my wife. I can't have a credit card, I don't have a bank account. All my assets are with her, I better be nice to her. So if you're under sanctions, it's no joke. So when they threaten the ICC, you put out an arrest warrant on Netanyahu, we'll go after you and your family members. A number of US senators have signed that. So of course the ICC has to stand up to it. But I'm quite sure privately they will say, hey, this is a serious matter. Not just me, but also my entire family. Then how do I operate? But how long can you pursue this cause? So last night, India, yesterday, India signed an agreement with Iran to open up a new corridor from Chabahar to the Caspian to Central Asia. Now, Chabahar was used by the Indians to supply the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. With US support, they closed one eye. But now the US have moved out from Afghanistan. India is left without a capability in Asia. So strategically, they need access. And the US said, we will sanction you. I don't think the US can afford to sanction India because they want India to side with them against China. The Indians know it. The Indians are playing a very clever game. They say, well, you know, we are buying arms from Russia, we're selling arms to Russia, we'll have access to Iran, and do your worst. I don't think the US will dare to do its worst. And everywhere now, the US will find countries standing up to them. So you can no longer contain Iran, you can't contain North Korea, with Russia as a member of the Security Council refusing to vote to continue the surveillance facility on North Korea. So this is the kind of situation we're entering.
So for liberals, 2016 was a profoundly humiliating moment, and those can be good. Well-adjusted adults learn from humiliating moments, but that's not what liberals did. They turned their rage outward, and they focused that rage on the people they had failed. You always hate the ones you betray. So liberals decided they hated the American middle class. In 2016, Democrats stopped making arguments in favor of their own policies, whatever those might be, and instead reoriented the entire party around attacking the very people that historically they had represented. Again, America's middle class. Now they hated them. They controlled everything, but they had no interest in making things better. They were no longer interested at all in social improvement. Social Security, they bragged about that for almost 100 years. They stopped talking about it. Head Start, remember that? Improving public schools. These were all liberal enthusiasms. They tried them all, and none of them worked. So they moved in the other direction. Instead of trying to fix the country, they decided to destroy the country and just start over. If you were watching from outside, it looked like they were having a fit. They erupted into uncontrollable nihilistic rage. They swept the plates off the table, punched a hole in the drywall, threw a vase on the TV, burn it down, let's start over. They called this the equity agenda. And you should have been nervous when you listened to them talk about it, because every time they talked about the equity agenda, they scowled. Why are they talking like that? It's so obviously untrue, and yet they're all reading from the same script. There has to be a purpose here. They're not doing this accidentally. People don't use identical chunks of language on the same day by accident. They thought this through. And then they began putting people on television whose only qualification was their willingness to say things that, again, 3 years ago would have been considered beyond the pale. And that's just a few of them, a lot of them.
Whose only qualification was their willingness to say things that, again, 3 years ago would have been considered beyond the pale.
Take a look at your screen. There's a nationwide manhunt to find this man, Lander Coleman. Police say he shot a young mother and her 2 kids. Family says he was hiding inside their home for hours until he attacked.
Coleman was caught on surveillance video walking out of the house with a gun, and he's been on the run ever since.
In an interview you'll see only on 2, our Marissa Perlman spoke to a family fearing for their own safety and yours.
This is what domestic violence looks like. A crime scene frozen in time. Blood on the floor, on children's toys, a school picture, a bullet casing left behind. There's so much blood, we're blurring some video so you don't have to see what this family lived through.
Just thinking about it, gets me emotional, like knowing that my son thought he was facing death at that moment. It's really tough.
Stephen Booth takes us through what his 12-year-old son survived that night, May 18th.
Junior was in his room playing video games. He heard gunshots and his mother screaming.
They want you to see what happened because they want your help getting this man, Lander Coleman, caught. There's a warrant for his arrest after what happened inside this house.
So his mother called out for him. He ran into the room, jumped on Mr. Coleman's back, tried to pull him off his mother. Ms. Coleman turned around, shot Junior twice, 1 through the arm and 1 through the leg.
Junior's mom shot 7 times. She'd been sleeping with her 2 youngest children. They saw everything. They're his kids, too.
How could you do that to a child? You know, how could you do that to your children's mother?
Junior ran into this bedroom trying to stop the bleeding and hide. Then he heard more gunshots. His 23-year-old sister, who'd been sleeping on this couch, was shot, and they say beaten, too. After that, take a look at this. Surveillance cameras catch the suspect walking out the front door, a gun seen in his right hand. That's when Stephen was called.
It's probably the most unsettling and scariest call I've ever received, but But an hour and a half not knowing, if my child was dead or if my child was, not knowing. That was the worst part of it.
The attack happened at 1 a.m. So how did the suspect get inside? There were dozens of people at the house that night for a prom party, and the garage door had been left open.
So we think he came from the garage into here and then went to the basement.
So he came in during the party when all these
kids were here. We think at some point he came during the party.
They think the suspect hid in this storage room, possibly for hours until the party was over, and then made his way upstairs and started shooting.
His 3 kids were here, so it does not make sense.
Ngozi Harris, a cousin, was at the party. She was stunned when she got the call 3 family members had been shot just hours after she left.
It felt like my heart stopped.
And now she's worried about her family's safety, and yours too. He's still out there. What do you want people to know about him?
That he's a threat. That means everybody is at risk if he's still out there. So everybody should be working together to bring him to justice.
Madison police are working with local and federal law enforcement to try and catch Coleman. All 3 victims are now recovering.
I'm Larry Miller. The big story tonight, the suspect wanted in connection to the death of a Maryland parole agent has been arrested. A few hours ago, we learned that Emmanuel Sewell was found in West Virginia. All of this while loved ones and law enforcement mourn the loss of one of their own. Our Alexis Wainwright with the details tonight from Chevy Chase.
It's a nightmare.
People like this man who didn't want to be identified can't believe what happened in their neighborhood.
It's terrifying. This is, we live in this neighborhood. We put great effort into finding, a safe neighborhood for our family and kids.
Emmanuel Edward Sewell is in custody just 24 hours after he was accused of killing a parole agent Friday.
I haven't personally seen him, but I know many people in my building have seen him. My wife's seen him. Our neighbors have seen him. He's definitely someone around.
It's sad. We're families, we have schools are just around here.
Police say they found Sewell driving on the highway in West Virginia. He's accused of killing 33-year-old Davis Martinez, a 6-year employee of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correction Services.
The loss of a law enforcement officer who was performing his duties for the state of Maryland is a tragedy.
We've had many conversations about our agent, and things like professional, diligent, resilience are what we hear about Agent Martinez.
Early Friday, Martinez performed a welfare check at Sewell's house on Terrace Drive in Chevy Chase. But when Martinez failed to report back to work after the call, investigators say more officers were deployed to the house. When they arrived, they found Martinez inside dead. It's still unclear how he died, but police noted blunt force trauma. The Secretary of Maryland Department of Safety and Correction Services says the two knew each other for quite some time. She added that Martinez was alone when he performed that welfare check.
And it is typical that they go alone on those visits. Typically, they will assess the situation, assess the risk. This individual had not shown to pose a risk prior.
Saturday afternoon, people were honoring Martinez, who's considered by many to be an unsung hero after paying the ultimate sacrifice.
The death of Agent Martinez is a stark reminder of the dangers we face every day.
Those people are the, first line defense. When you're in trouble, you make a call for the police to come help you, and what they do is. It's incredible, and they often don't get appreciated for it.
Sewell has been charged with second-degree murder and will be extradited back here to Montgomery County. In the meantime, people who live here are trying to wrap their minds around what happened. We did also reach out about details for funeral arrangements, but we haven't heard back.
We've been very concerned about the lack of availability to determine citizenship status, not just by groups like ours, but by states themselves. They can't get close enough to a citizenship status database to make good determinations. That then led me to look a little deeper, because as you rightly lay out, there's a motivation here. So what might that be? We've seen many, many videos of people coming across the border who are talking about their excitement about voting for Joe Biden and claiming that they are citizens. But yet, we hear debates in Congress where the congressman will say, "You can't. Don't worry. Non-citizens can't vote. It's a crime of perjury. It's a felony." So, okay, we took a deep look at the criminal code, and Title 18 left us just gobsmacked, because when you read all the way through it, as it lists all of the stipulations against non-citizen voting in federal elections and lays out the penalties therefore, scroll all the way down to the fine print, and what you read is that non-citizens can vote without penalty if at the time they are voting, they believe themselves to be U.S. citizens.
Can vote without penalty if at the time they are voting, they believe themselves to be U.S. citizens.
Well, I mean, that seems insane. I mean, I'm taking your word for it. I'm not a lawyer or an expert in the federal code. But is there any other crime? Like, if I can show that I didn't know I was robbing a liquor store, I had a gun in my hand, I was demanding money, but I didn't really think it was robbery, does that shield me from being prosecuted for robbing a liquor store?
In gunshots and dozens of people running for shelter.
Police say one person is dead and 24 others are hurt.
We outside, we enjoying ourselves, the next thing you know, we running for our lives. That fast. I feel like I heard over 50 shots, heard a lot of screaming.
And the shooting started after midnight. Police say they started receiving multiple 911 calls all at once, and around that same time, more than a dozen people were arriving at a nearby hospital. Police say the streets were covered in bullet casings, and they do believe that the shooting may have been a drive-by. Law enforcement and city leaders now asking any witnesses to help them find answers.
I want to be very clear. Anyone who was involved in last night's shooting will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. There are people out there who know the person or persons involved, and I implore you to speak up.
Police have not given any possible suspect descriptions and have not identified the man who died.
Well, now to that viral video fallout after a man was seen driving during a virtual court hearing for driving on a suspended license. Today, Corey Harris talks about why he was behind the wheel, but he also says he should not have been charged in the first place.
And 7 News reporter Kimberly Craig talked to Harris and checked into that suspension.
After he was busted driving on a suspended license, Corey Harris had to report to the Washtenaw County Jail here. And today I asked him what everyone wants to know. What were you thinking?
What was I thinking? I was thinking about getting my wife medical help. That's what I was thinking.
Corey Harris said that's why he was behind the wheel earlier this month when he appeared before District Court Judge Cedric Simpson, who knew Harris was appearing on a charge of driving while license suspended.
Mr. Harris, are you driving? Actually, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second.
We spoke to Harris by phone today, and he said the doctor wanted to see his wife for some ongoing medical issues that had worsened, and he didn't think about anything but getting her there.
You stationary? I'm pulling in right now at this second. Yes, I am.
Corey Harris was cited for driving while license suspended in Pittsfield Township back in October. He said it was suspended for unpaid child support. Secretary of State records show his license was first suspended for child support back in 2010. But Harris told us he thought his license had been reinstated.
They were supposed to have lifted it two years ago, but they didn't.
And according to the Saginaw County court records we found, Harris is right.
Taking your word for it, I'm not a lawyer or an expert in the federal code. But is there any other crime? Like, if I can show that I didn't know I was robbing a liquor store, I had a gun in my hand, I was demanding money, but I didn't really think it was robbery, does that shield me from being prosecuted for robbing a liquor store?
No, certainly not. But I will say that this state of mind idea is something that we've come up against in the past related to domicile. As we've done reviews of the voter rolls and you see people that are registered, but they're registered to vacant lots, they're registered to fast food restaurants, and the press you get back from the state as well, but residency is a state of mind. This takes that to an entirely different level. And I'll tell you what I'm really concerned about, Tucker, is that when we lived through 2020 and we saw the landscape change, lawlessness take hold, we watched on the sidelines and said, surely this can't be what it looks like is happening. Surely this move to the mass mail of ballots and unmonitored drop boxes and third-party election workers that have no proper training to support all of the ebbs and flows of process, surely this can't be what's about to play out. And then when it did, you're left with scant few days to try to pick up the pieces and prove what really happened. I'm seeing this now play out in 2024 on this issue, much the same. And so it's my hope that we can awaken Americans to this problem and demand accountability before November so that we can decide if citizenship is truly a state of mind.
Do you think that suggests that the foreigner, because the proposition here is that we're allowing foreigners to choose our leaders, which is insane, of course. But is the law written in such a way that foreigner will not be punished for voting in our elections, but will that vote still count? Is that clear?
Well, it's a great question, but that means the ballots are anonymous. So once that ballot has been cast, either by mail and it's been separated from the envelope with which it's carried to the central count, so you can't tell who voted if that's been separated, the envelope from the ballot, and certainly by machine you can't tell. So no, there's no way to pull this back. It's why it is critical that we get on the front side of this and have a very national discussion.
Harris is right. In January 2022, a judge rescinded that suspension on his license, but for some reason that information never got to the Secretary of State, where even as of today, his license is still listed as suspended, the same records the judge was going by.
This is a driving while license suspended?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And he was just driving. Failure to turn himself in will result in a bench warrant with no bond.
It's very embarrassing. And with the type of ties that I have with the church and the community, it's very embarrassing.
Thursday afternoon, Harris told us he was going to the Secretary of State's office to try to straighten out everything between them and friend of the court once and for all.
Always double check behind these workers, because they will say that they will do something and they don't do it. Always double check behind these workers, because they will say that they will do something and they don't do it.
Let's hope he gets that straightened out.